We just haven't had one come into the West Coast in this fashion. Again, like we've been talking about, what, 1921, the Tarpon Springs hurricane. Bottom line is, folks who I see a lot of folks did with Helene, they took advantage of the evacuation time frame. They headed on out. But for those folks who are deciding to stick around with this one, once those tropical storm force winds start up, you need to just hunker down and just start to ride this one out.
The real-time wobble tracker streaming live on WFLA.com. I'm here with meteorologists Eric Stone and Ed Bloodsworth. I want to remind our audience that we'll be taking your questions coming up here in just a short time. We actually began the YouTube live stream with chat deactivated. That was a complete accident. We were so focused on the track update that our team forgot to actually activate live chat. YouTube live. If you are currently on the stream and you don't see chat scrolling on the screen, just leave for a second and come back in. It's the only time I'll ever tell anybody in our chat to leave, but it will refresh. And when you come back into the live stream, you will see the chat scrolling on your screen. You'll be able to enter comments with our hashtag system, and we will be able to feature your questions here live and show you, of course, live images from around the Tampa Bay area. We have cameras and crews everywhere to be able to take you around the Tampa Bay region. Let's now go to Brianda Villegas. She is joining us from a shelter nearby. Let's see.
Here, everyone has to have their bags checked before they can walk into this shelter. And this is just one of 5 general population shelters open in the county. All throughout the morning, we've seen residents checking into shelters like these along with their pets. A lot of them from zones A, B, C, and mobile homes, which are all under mandatory evacuation orders in the county. One resident that we talked to is actually hunkering down at River Ridge High School in Newport Richey, where we were earlier this morning. He says he's been living in Pasco County since 1996, and it's his first time leaving his home for a storm.
As the soundbite now playing on News Channel 8. Preparing for the back end of this live report. Again, just tapping into this raw camera
And I'm being
signal.
told that there is still room for people to come into this shelter here at Sun Lake High School in Land Lakes. But something important to note is that if you are planning on bringing your pets, you have to make sure you bring a crate for them, and make sure you bring bedding, something to sleep on, toiletries, anything that you might want to snack on, games to keep either your family occupied. But for now, I'll send it back to you.
All right, Brianda Villegas will be spotlighting our reporters around the Tampa Bay area all day. Many of them who have not only covered recent tropical storms and hurricanes, but I mean, in the last month. I mean, we're talking about Helene hitting just so recently, and then all of a sudden, here we are. So, Ed, I don't know if our reporter crews fully unpacked from their Helene coverage before having to repack and get ready for Milton coverage.
Yeah, I know. We actually have one of our WKRG reporters is down there in St. Pete here doing some reporting now. I'll tell you what, though, and I know because you're familiar with this area up here in the northern Gulf Coast, JB, we have been taking in evacuees. We've had a lot of the RV parks that have offered free hookups for folks fleeing the storm, and the Pensacola Bay Center, the big arena there in Pensacola, has actually also been opened up as a shelter for evacuees coming in out of Central Florida. And, that's just been a big issue because as folks who are coming in out of Central Florida, obviously if you go north, you're still running into areas that are still recovering from Helene. So you have to, if folks who are really wanting to get out of the way and try to find available hotels and things, they have to go a little farther than they normally would. So that would take them up to I-10 and go a little bit farther west towards our neck of the woods. Evacuees are spread far and wide here. Still some from Helene, and now many more from Milton. Like you said, we've been pointing it out here, this wobble tracker, we're going to keep a close eye on it there. You can actually kind of see the structure starting to change a bit here. You don't have that fully closed in eye wall, and just was looking at the hurricane hunters. They did note that the eye is now open to the south, which would denote I would say weakening storm. Don't want to say this is going to be weak by any measure. But I know we've been talking a lot about the surge and the wind impacts, but even if this were to take a more southerly track, you're still talking about a tremendous rain event for Central Florida, Eric, I know you've been looking at some of the. I think there's a high risk out for the I-4 corridor right
Yeah,
now.
I mean, the last time there was a high risk out, it was with Helene in Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. So, some of the forecast models have 18 to even our in-house 18 to 24 inches of rain. I think that might have backed off a bit to 12 to 18, but still, you're talking about a foot and a half of rain, and you're talking rainfall rates at least 4 inches an hour, maybe even 5 inches an hour at some point, especially the northern end of the storm. So the northern eye wall is just, you can see it there on our on radar, that deep red right on the top of really where that 4 is on the screen. So that's where you're going to see the heaviest rainfall rates. And again, a lot of flooding, not storm surge flooding, but freshwater rain flooding that will occur inland in low-lying areas. And again, that's the main concern away from the coast, is the heavy rain. Thankfully, this is moving a lot faster than Ian moved, almost twice the speed, really. And, so we're not going to have the 20 to 25 inches of rain far inland like in Orlando. And, the flooding they had there will be a little bit more minimized. But still, there's going to be a lot of inland flooding. You can see all the moisture to the north and northeast of the storm. And like I said, that really heavy rain band making its way on Marco Island now and Naples and, heading toward Fort Myers, Cape Coral, Sarasota. And eventually we're going to tap into that rain band after about 12:30, 1 o'clock.
So, calling balls and strikes here for just a moment. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's fairly accurate to say that on Wobble Tracker right now, the eye of the storm is pretty much right on track. Correct, Eric? And
well,
Ed? I mean, we're pretty close.
So you're looking at the past track.
Mm-hmm.
So you really can't tell if the eye, if
that
it's
was an
on
update
track.
right there.
Yeah, you really can't tell if it's on track until between 11 o'clock when they updated the track. See what I'm saying? So
But
there.
I'll tell you, but hold on though, because before the 11 o'clock update, I was in here with an entire team in the stream center. We were looking here on the big monitor, and we were all paying attention to Wobble Tracker before the 11 o'clock track came out, and it looked like it was right on track.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So, and that's a sign of model consensus and really more elevated confidence that we're going to be staying on this track. But last minute wobbles are entirely possible, right?
But again, look at the last 2 hours. It's
Right.
moving north of east, and then all of a sudden the track kind of juts it straight northeast, like it makes a hard right turn. I don't think it's going to make a hard right turn. I think it's going to make a gradual right turn. So we'll see if this stays a little bit to the north of the track and then maybe corrects itself, making more of a right turn. I mean, I would be a little concerned about the last 2 hours, because right there on the radar, right about 9:45, it starts taking a more northerly turn. And the question is, when is it going to start taking a more easterly turn?
So that northern turn could have Tampa implications.
Well, it would have to stay there. It would have to stay that far north for at least another hour or two before I would start really getting worried. All right. But again, it's when is this? And we talked about this, JB, the last several days. We said, all right, this is going to take a turn to the north, and then it's going to take a turn back to the east. The question is, when is it going to take a turn to the north? And how long is it going to take that? How long is it going to stay on that trajectory? And then when is it going to take that turn back more northeasterly with a more easterly component? Is it going to be sooner or later? And if it's later, then we're looking at a possible northern landfall. If it's sooner, then it would be a little bit further to the south. So again, it's already taken that turn to the north. I think yesterday's track update was because it was a little bit longer to take the initial turn to the north. And so we watched on Wobble Tracker all day how this thing was way, way, way south of the track. And that's when I had said, oh boy, this has got to do something. It's got to shift the track a little bit to the south. And then you start to see the model runs that initialized on that new position. Next thing you know, all the model runs were down Sarasota, all the model runs were down in Venice, and there goes the track down to Sarasota. So again, it's key to see when this starts to take a turn to the northeast, because if this stays north of that track, then I think the track would be slightly to the north. It's really, really, really touch and go the next few hours, JB, to see how long this is going to take before it actually starts to move back straight to the northeast.
So we'll try to get some live cameras up your way, folks. We have live reporters standing by as well, but let's just focus on the upper right quadrant of this screen. So the outer band there, it looks like some dark reds into oranges. that looks like it's becoming, really almost like completely parallel with Sarasota and Fort Myers there. So what can folks in Sarasota, Fort Myers expect over the next hour or so?
Yeah, that is a heavy, heavy rain band that's coming into Naples, Fort Myers, and Sarasota in the next 20 to 30 minutes or so. So you're going to have strong gusty wind and a lot of rain. Rainfall rates very, very high. And again, people in that area obviously should not be on the roadways. And, whether they hunkered down, hopefully the people that were told to evacuate left, but the people that are still there, yeah, they're going to get some nasty rain and the possibility of some spin-ups as this rain band makes its way onto land. We start to see some of those, some of that friction, and the tornado threat again is going to be huge, especially in this particular band right here. So we'll see if any warnings come out along the coast.
Ed, anything to add as we look here at Wobble Tracker and monitor progress?
Yeah, I'm looking at actually some of the velocity data within that band, and there are definitely some areas where we're starting to see some, some signs of water spout activity out there, just off of Fort Myers, off of Sarasota. So, but that is going to be that's just a gnarly band when that comes on, and even if you don't get tornadoes with this, I would assume you're definitely going to have tropical storm force gusts within that band as it starts moving on. Folks there, Sarasota, Longboat Key, Siesta Key. You're gonna have a really rough couple hours here as that band comes on. And then you kind of notice that there's almost there's a little gap between that one and the next band that's sitting offshore. That's again a sign of some of that drier air and some of that wind shear starting to take its toll on the circulation. So you may get a little bit of a break, maybe lightens up a bit, and then another band will come on through. And folks who have gone through these, you'll know they just come in one after the other until the storm bypasses you. So yeah, these are gonna they're gonna be some fairly rough bands of rain to go on through. I'm also watching a couple of other those little supercells back in South Central Florida as well. There are numerous, what I'm counting, 1, 2, 3, 4 tornado warnings out right now down towards the Palmdale area. Those storms are going to be tracking towards Placid Lakes and Sebring over in Highlands County. Those will be tracking in your direction in the next couple of minutes, and eventually that same kind of cluster will work its way towards southern Polk County in the next couple of hours. So again, even if you're far inland, you have a tornado threat that's going to likely ramp up here through the next couple of hours. But like you said, I got my eyes peeled on this, just like you all do as well, as some of these initial bands start rolling through downtown. And is that our tower? Is that the tower cam there?
That
FLA?
is, yep.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, watch the Hillsborough River this afternoon, and you'll keep your eyes on it. You may get some of that minor flooding. And I know we've been talking about, going back and forth with this track, if it shifts any, a little bit farther north or farther south. And that is really, I think that's reflected in the storm surge forecast that's been out by the NHC. You could end up in a situation, if this were to make landfall, like you said, in Sarasota, the surge would be much lower, much lower in Tampa Bay, just with the geography and topography of our coastline of the West Coast. But assuming if that sneaks, 10 miles north, now you're talking about that 8 to 12 feet verifying into parts of Tampa Bay. Still, that 10 to 15 threshold still is more likely between Anna Maria Island and down towards Boca Grande or Bonita Beach and Charlotte Harbor, based off the current track. But again, any off the track will have a profound impact on the amount of surge that gets into the Tampa Bay area there, JB.
All right. So look, I am the non-meteorologist here on the stream. I just tee up these meteorologists to tap into their experience and their expertise. But I want you to look here on the center of the screen. Watch right here, coming up when the track cycles back. I'm going to look at this like snaking effect. Do you see that going on right there? Do you see how it's like going like this?
It almost shifted. Yeah. It shifted a little bit north in the last couple of minutes, like Eric was mentioning. It kind of went a little more northeast, a little wobble northeast instead of pure northeast. And it's like you said, it's those little snake-like wobbles, JB, that have tremendous impacts on the landfall point.
All right, so those are very gradual snake-like wobbles, but What I'm curious about is whether or not that snake sort of slithering back and forth like this, and again, not a meteorologist, folks, bear with me, that this is going to be more like this, and eventually, as it hits the coast, it's going to hit either Tampa or Sarasota, or maybe that middle ground right between those two major cities. I just, I see that snaking going on, and I'm just curious where that trend is going to go in the next few hours.
This is because it's interacting with the jet. So the storm wants to go in one direction, right? So it says, all right, I'm going this way. And the jet says, no, you're going this way. And then the storm kind of wobbles back and, no, I'm going this way. And the jet's, no, I'm pulling it. So you're going to see that for a little while as it continues to interact with the jet. Eventually, and again, we've got a pretty strong front that's coming through. Eventually, this is going to kind of ride along that front. And then it's not going to really have a choice because, once it interacts with that, it's going to take it more, it's going to take it more to the northeast and then to the east-northeast. The question is, when is that going to happen? So right now, you're seeing the interaction of the whole gyre, so to speak, moving and, kind of wobbling, much like Helene did eventually. But again, this, it's very key to see if this does deviate and move more to the north before it moves more to the east. For now, though, I think on this given track, we're going to see hardly any water in the Hillsborough River, especially once this thing gets pretty close to us.
So I wanted to ask about that next. So we have seen the effect. It's really, let's call it a phenomenon.
Yeah,
when
it is.
the bay gets emptied. Folks, Tampa Bay is relatively shallow, right? So we have seen with previous storms, when you have rotation basically pointing out of the bay, a hurricane or tropical storm has the potential to literally suck the water out of Tampa Bay. I mean, draining a bathtub type of effect, right?
Yeah.
So it happened during Ian. If this does hold, or if this even does nudge to the south, you guys, are we going to have that phenomenon again with an empty Tampa Bay?
Pretty much, yeah. And you know what? It still could move, not that I wanted to, but it still could move a little bit further to the north, and we would still be okay. As long as this thing is south of, Longboat Key or so, then I think the water's going to be pushed out. The one thing, though, that people may not realize, and I've said this before, is the western portion of Tampa Bay, right, around Shore Acres, St. Petersburg, and eastern Pinellas County, water from Tampa Bay is going to be pushed up, and there is going to be a surge on the eastern side of Pinellas County. If I had to make a guesstimate of what that could be, it's not like water's being pushed from the Gulf of Mexico in. It's being pushed from what's already in Tampa Bay, and because it's shallow, maybe 5 foot at worst, depending on how far north this gets. If the bay is in the eye wall, then I would definitely say a good 5 foot of surge could be pushed onto eastern Pinellas County. But the damage would be so much more catastrophic if this was moving to the north of Tampa Bay, because all of the water from the Gulf of Mexico would be pushed in to Tampa Bay. And again, I'm looking at my phone because
guys, check this out really quickly. A live picture here from the Sunshine Skyway Bridge.
That's got to be closed, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it is closed, and this is a main thoroughfare, obviously, for the Tampa Bay area. This bridges Pinellas and Manatee counties. Really a beautiful site, a beautiful bridge that is used by tens of thousands, if not more than that, every single solitary day for commute purposes, traveling purposes, or even just to take in our beautiful coastline and making the drive along Florida's Gulf Coast. It is eerily empty. Not even a single emergency vehicle making its way in the north or southbound direction. And you see the shakiness there. That shaking is going to continue while the bridge has been built with tropical storms and hurricanes in mind. The cameras that are mounted there still are going to be significantly impacted by wind gusts in excess of how many, maybe 60, 70 miles an hour in the coming hours?
Oh, more than that. I mean, you could easily see wind gusts to 100.
especially high up.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. I mean, obviously the further up you go, it's going to be a little bit more windy. It's got the wind, it's got nothing to really slow it down. It's not like we're downtown with buildings and whatnot, although that acts like a wind tunnel. That's a whole different thing. But yeah, I mean, on top of the Skyway Bridge, that wind's going to be kicking. And I would almost guarantee that at some point, we're going to be seeing wind gusts up there over 100 miles an hour as this thing gets close to making landfall.
All right, so we'll monitor the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. This shot is going to deteriorate. I will tell you what, I have never seen this shot go down.
Yeah.
These traffic cameras, especially the newer ones, the HD ones like this, are pretty reliable. But I'll tell you what, with what is heading our way, not even just the camera itself, but the connectivity itself, that actually sends the signal from the camera and blasts it out through FDOT. I mean, look, I am curious to see how long this camera shot holds up. We've had we've had people that have really, I'll mention Stoppy, of course, up in Cedar Key.
Yeah.
This traffic camera, how long is this going to hold on? How long is this going to persevere? Because and other traffic cameras, along Florida's Gulf Coast. We're going to monitor and tap into these signals as much as possible. In the meantime, we've got live reporters coming your way here in just a moment on Track in the Tropics, folks. A look at the real-time wobble tracker streaming live all the time on WFLA.com. Send this link, WFLA.com/wobble tracker, to your friends and family in the path of this storm. I am saying that because that's exactly what I did all morning long. I had a text that I copied and pasted to all of my friends and family and said, this is why this tool is important. And let me kind of bring up, because I know from hearing Jeff and Eric talk about it so much in years past, why this is a critical hour for this tool. It's because right now we are between updates. So when the NHC issues a new track, of course, the eye is going to be lined up with the track. They come basically back in line. But now, from this point up until about 4:45 p.m., we're going to be able to increasingly monitor those deviations off the track, whether or not the storm is wobbling north to Tampa, south towards Sarasota. And so, again, we're going to be featuring it heavily here on Track in the Tropics. But if you want to have it in the palm of your hand all the time, or people that have weather monitors set up in their home and have like 4 or 5 displays set up on their computer, you want to have that tab open, the Wobble Tracker is a great tool to monitor the storm's progress in relation to the NHC's track. We're going to get to your live questions coming in, folks. You can use hashtag #HeyEd, hashtag #HeyEric, hashtag #HeyJB. Those questions are coming up. We are adding them to the queue. But I want to bring up something that Ed noted about 10 minutes ago. Ed, you noted that we're having some eye wall deterioration here, especially, is it the southwest side? The eye is kind of falling apart here. What does that exactly mean as far as, it's weird to talk about an eye having deterioration at Category 4 strength, no?
Well, I mean, actually, if you go back to what was it, a couple days ago when we had these the storm hit that Cat 5 180 mile an hour wind, there's so much energy and so much forcing going on within these eye walls. It's actually fairly difficult for these systems to maintain the structure for a long period of time. That's why they go through these cycles where the eye wall deteriorates and then it reforms. That's what we saw last night or yesterday when that storm weakened. What was it, Monday night, and then re-intensified back to a Category 5. It replaced its cycle. But what you're seeing now, this is something different. It's not going through an eye wall replacement cycle. That is wind shear. That's what's happening right now. And so you've got strong winds now coming in out of the southwest that are starting to kind of tip the core of the storm over. And a perfect hurricane, you go from the center to the upper levels. It's almost just straight up and down. It's vertically stacked. In this case, when shear comes in, it tilts that over. And so you end up getting the cores of these hurricanes where they start to get disrupted. And that generally will result in a weakening phase, which we have seen this morning as that still a strong Category 4, but the pressures are coming up. The wind speeds are starting to drop off. But the issue that Eric was mentioning is that a lot of our forecast models kind of had this happening a little bit earlier than it actually did. So now we're still talking about a Category 4 coming in. But it's even if the southern eye wall starts to deteriorate, which is happening, still in that northern eye wall is where you're going to have those major hurricane winds. It's going to hold there in that major in that northern eye wall.
Ed, hold that thought really quickly. We have a live report. Melissa Marino standing by.
All morning, that massive effort that's been going on, kind of eerie now because the gates are locked up and the trucks are gone. I want to show you, though, you can see the Mid-Florida Amphitheater. It has been turned into a landfill. This is where trucks have been dumping for days, and this is just a massive, massive pile. Now, we have learned these debris, or the debris rather, is actually from Pinellas County. It's an agreement between the state and Pinellas County due to issues and the landfill, we're told, being full. So this became a 24/7 operation to get all the debris from that area, you know, that you've been seeing in communities like Shore Acres, all the coastal areas that were hit hard by storm surge. Now, the big concern is that this could potentially, with the hurricane force winds, it could turn all of this debris into projectiles and cause major damage. The governor launched this effort over the weekend. Back out here live, you can see this site in the background. That's I-4 that you're looking at. It's only a few hundred feet away from the interstate. You could see it from there. So certainly a concern is that the high winds could kick up the debris and put it onto the interstate. But we know that they wanted to get the stuff out of the neighborhoods and to get it at least into a safer location. So hopefully, you know, that doesn't happen. Hopefully it doesn't go in the interstate, but only time will tell. Back to you.
All right, Melissa Marino reporting for us. We'll continue to monitor progress with our live reporters. All right, so back in here with me, we're going to get spaghetti models coming in here shortly as well. I'll be very curious to see what the spaghetti models are doing. We're going to be adding them to our graphics located in the center of your screen. Anything to note before we get into the Q&A? We're going to start the call for your questions now.
You know,
folks.
I tried, you know, looking at the models coming in now. And, you know, I haven't really seen much as far as a northerly movement with this, northerly landfall with the 0Z and some of the 6Zs that are coming out. So, you know, the model consensus was a little bit further south on the track, actually a little closer to Venice. But again, you know, it really all depends on if this thing continues to move straight to the north or if this is going to, you know, take that northeasterly turn sooner than later so that it does make landfall in Sarasota rather than here in the Bay.
All right.
And I think that's going to, sorry, JB, that's going to actually, you know, change who actually gets the hurricane force winds, because the latest advisory has the hurricane force wind field about 35 miles out from the center. And so again, even if this goes, you know, 5-10 miles north or south, it's that northern eye wall. When it comes on shore, that's where I think you're gonna have the most likelihood of seeing those hurricane winds, and that will change who gets the hurricane force winds as well. So even now, as we're getting closer to landfall, JB, still a lot of questions.
Guys, so we have video now. I want to show this to everybody. Before we get to the Q&A, we got lots of questions in the queue, but we were talking earlier about the phenomenon of a storm, a tropical storm or hurricane sucking water out of Tampa Bay because of the winds pointing out of Tampa Bay at such tremendous force. Check out this video that we racked up with our WFLA team in the newsroom. So this is a bit of what it looks like. That is Tampa Bay, but you can see there in the center, you guys, areas that are completely exposed. These waters that you see here in the foreground are, what, a couple of inches deep, maybe? You guys want to describe it? Yeah, maybe up to a foot or so. But again, once we see these winds really pick up, you'll notice it a lot more.
Yeah, I'm assuming that you can kind of see the motion of the water. I'm assuming you guys got, what, northeast winds right now? I would assume over the bay.
Well, this isn't live. This is from Ian. This
is
when Ian.
I'm
sorry, you guys.
Gotcha.
This is when Ian sucked water out of Tampa Bay.
Oh yeah. There were only a few inches of water. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like I said, same thing happened with Irma. I know. Remember, we had video back then of folks just walking in the bay, and it ended up actually kind of an unfortunate thing. It ended up beaching a lot of manatees and a lot of sea life during that time. But you know, again, just it's going to depend on the exact landfall point. If we get that phenomenon, I would think it's more likely than not that we're going to see that again, with water kind of getting pushed out of the bay. But yeah, it's quite a sight to see when the bay empties out. It's very very eerie when I've seen that in the past down there.
Yeah, Tampa Bay being lowered to just inches of water, and sea life just being basically losing their home. I mean, we're talking about people losing houses. I mean, the bay is home to, countless wildlife in our waters, and so to see the water just sucked out, and it's heartbreaking to see. It's one that you just stare out and your jaw's on the floor. All right, let's get to the Q&A. Hashtag Hey Ed, hashtag Hey Eric, hashtag Hey JB. If you use one of those hashtags, we can bring your comment directly into the interactive live stream from Facebook Live and YouTube Live. Dazzling Fox on YouTube Live. Hashtag Hey Eric. I've been following the data from NOAA, and it didn't make sense for a landfall at 2 a.m. According to their numbers, should have been 8 to 10 p.m. Why did they take so long to update it? Let's just kind of talk in general here about landfall time, because we do anticipate a post-midnight landfall.
Yeah, or at least midnight. I'm not sure. Initially, landfall was way before 8 o'clock, and then all of a sudden, maybe with that slight southerly turn near the Yucatan, that obviously added a little time to this because it didn't make a straight east, west to east motion over the Yucatan. It meandered to the south and then meandered back to the south a little bit. So that added a little time, but you see right there on the cone, 8 o'clock, it's still offshore, and it makes sense that if you kind of interpolate, it would be maybe between 11 and 12 o'clock. So I don't think it's going to be 8 to 10, but, when these systems get pulled up by a big feature like a jet stream, sometimes they really speed up. I mean, you saw Helene speed up as we figured, maybe even more so than what was predicted initially. But, that caused landfall to be maybe an hour sooner that day than NHC's track. So this could be closer to 10 o'clock, but the models really weren't in agreement. Some models had this coming in. The Euro had it really lagging behind, like 4 o'clock in the morning at some point. GFS was always a little quicker, right around midnight last night anyway for tonight. But now the models are coming into agreement. And, I wouldn't say, why did NHC wait? Once the models come into agreement, then the track is updated.
Anything to add there, Ed, before we go to the next question?
Yeah, like I said, it's just it's difficult to as Eric said, when these upper level features get involved, they can cause some dramatic shifts and changes in the speed of these tropical cyclones. And so that's why we tend to speak in very broad terms when we talk about landfall points, and I know a lot of folks kind of want to know the exact time when it's going to happen. Well, in a lot of these cases, it's just not feasible to do that. And quite frankly, I don't think it benefits people if we are just giving you an exact time of when it's going to make landfall, because again, these systems can wobble, they can move, but especially on the west coast of Florida, if you get wobbles here, that's going to change the landfall point, but it can also have a dramatic change the landfall timing as well. So that's why I would urge folks not to get too locked down in an exact hour or minute of landfall. Just at this point, it's going to be sometime. We're fairly confident. I would say sometime. If I was even 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., that's going to be the window when it makes landfall.
All right, next question. It comes in from Magliozzi Spotting. Hashtag HJB. Question for you: do you guys have shelter in case your studio gets damaged by the storm that's coming your way? Because you guys are on the Hillsborough River. I'm afraid for you guys too. Yeah, we appreciate that. We've had a lot of comments come in because you want to know what? This camera is located about 60, 70 feet or so above the stream center. So this is where we are located at WFLA. We are on the Hillsborough River with so many other people that are right on the beautiful waterway, of course, that's connected to Tampa Bay. So yeah, there's a lot of concern for and not just us, but everybody along the Hillsborough River. Ed, you know this area well. The Riverwalk, a beautiful site, of course, but we are vulnerable here, no doubt.
Yeah, I mean, just kind of funny on a personal note. Every time I look at this camera, I always spot my high school. So my Blake High School, I could always usually see from this view. But no, I mean, you mentioned that there at FLA, you guys have contingency plans in case we do get a significant surge that pushes into the bay and up the Hillsborough River. And so, every just about every television station as we bring coverage of these trout landfalling systems, we're always keeping our safety in mind as well. We want to make sure we bring folks the most up-to-date information as quick as we can and give folks true context in terms of what's happening out there. But we never do that at the expense of our safety. So we all have plans, but I think everyone there appreciates the concern from all the viewers down there in the Tampa Bay area.
All right, Ed Bloodsworth. Yeah, it's interesting to see your high school there on that shot. I'll note that from our team, we do have a backup location. In fact, Eric, probably a good time to at least tell our audience about the plan with
so
you.
I mean, as much as I would like to stay here the next 16 hours with JB, which I really would, I'm going to Wesley Chapel. We're going to a hotel where we have a backup plan. So if this station does lose power, then, I would be broadcasting from there. We have a team that is on the way. And, that's what we'll be doing. So JB will have other meteorologists on here, and, he'll be on all day long. And, of course, I'll be thinking about him. And, that's just how you have to do things. You have to have a backup plan if things go out. We saw with Helene, we saw us lose power, and the only place that didn't lose power in the building was right here. So we were able to stream because JB, I mean, he just hits the button. He knows what to do. Next thing you know, we're on the air on the 11 o'clock news, and we're streaming the 11 o'clock news from here. So we've got a backup to the backup.
Yeah. So, folks, Eric will be leaving us in about 10 minutes or so, and that will, of course, take him away from tracking the tropics. However, his job is extremely important. He's on standby. If things go down here at WFLA, he's the first one to basically pop up on air and provide coverage for our audience here in the Tampa Bay market. I will tell you that we have other meteorologists that are going to be coming in. Chief Meteorologist Jeff Baradelli is going to be coming in, and then really interesting, we have our sister station WSNN in Sarasota. Their chief meteorologist Justin Mosley is going to be coming in and providing coverage here on stream as well. Sarasota, right in the path of this storm, there's going to be a ton of questions about Sarasota. So to have Justin's expertise on the live stream is going to be extremely valuable. As we look there's the spaghetti models, Eric and Ed. So what are we seeing here on spaghetti?
You see the consensus, again, is pretty much central Sarasota. Once it shifted yesterday and then it shifted again last night, I kind of figured, well, that's about it. I thought if it did shift south a little bit more, it might get down into southern Sarasota, like, right around Osprey and Venice area. But I think it's kind of honed in. But still, the consensus of the models, JB, not even 12 hours out. They're not really tightly packed. Helene, 3 days in advance, JB, if you remember, were very tightly packed. Of course, that's because it was moving in between two features, and we talked about this before. It didn't really have much of a choice. It had to kind of move west of the high, east of that upper level low. It didn't really have much play, right? But this one, it's interacting with a jet, and eventually it's going to interact with a front that pushes this thing more east than north. So again, it's when is it going to turn here? When is it going to turn there? Is it going to be sooner than later? And as you can see right there on the model plots, one of the models, I believe that's a Canadian, which has been typically, pretty far south, is taking this into Charlotte County. But I think it's kind of too late for that because this is already almost due west of Collier County. And I've been looking on radar, and there has been a lot of spin-ups. Downtown Naples, downtown Fort Myers, Cape Coral, all under tornado warnings right now with that big band of rain that I had expected to cause some spin-ups. And looking at the radar, I can see, I mean, Naples, Fort Myers is getting hammered right now with that rain band. I'm assuming the winds are at least, 40, 50 miles an hour in that band, gusting even higher. So again, that band moves in, the tornado spin-ups move in as well. And then there'll be a little break in the action, and then here we go again. But as far as the model plots go, you see the black, that's what we call the consensus. And, a lot of people say, well, what does consensus mean? But it's pretty much average. When we say consensus, it's pretty much average. So, yeah, I'm seeing all sorts of messages, tornado warnings in Fort Myers. I still get the notifications, and I was a meteorologist down there for 10 years, so I know that area pretty well, as you know this area pretty well. So I still get the notifications and whatnot, and I think these tornado warnings eventually, unfortunately, are going to move northward as this system moves to the north.
Yep, I get all the notifications when something spins up in Tampa Bay, so I know exactly what you mean. But yeah, I mean, like I said, it's that very strong band, and now we're starting to see what it's doing out there. Just you're going to see. I have a feeling this could very well be a fairly prolific tornado producer, just for this, just kind of the dynamics at play. That big jet coming in is going to increase the wind shear across the peninsula even more. I have a feeling we're going to see a lot of tornado warnings issued here in the next 6 to 12 hours.
And we'll, of course, be bringing you on-air coverage with our tornado warnings when they are issued. We get the alerts immediately. In fact, every time. Okay, so there's a 12 o'clock update on Milton that just came down. There it is. Max wind speeds 145 miles an hour.
Changed.
Nothing changing. Movement speed 17 miles an hour. No track update, but I want to read what the update is.
I think it's a position update.
Okay, so. Yeah, no, it is positional.
Yeah, because so if you look at the wobble tracker, it does appear that it may be a little bit west of that track.
A little north.
Can you see that? Yeah.
I see it. Yep.
And I kind of figured that would happen because it's not just going to take, that hard right turn. It's going to gradually move and then correct itself. But let's see how much longer this moves in that general direction before it moves to the northeast. That's the key right now. Yeah.
So we were talking a little bit earlier on about that snaking effect that we are seeing. It's kind of northeast,
yeah.
And so, will there be a more prolonged, northerly push or northeasterly push towards Sarasota, northerly push towards Tampa? We're going to monitor this. It's why the wobble tracker, every hour that goes by, it gets a little bit more valuable for us. But really right now, I mean, it is a tool that we are utilizing heavily, and you can, stream and have for free. It's on WFLA.com/wobble tracker. And we've deactivated ads on it, as I've been told. So it's free for everybody to use. You just stream it.